So I just played Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth, and I thought it was a weird crossover. Story-wise, it's a crossover between Persona 3 and Persona 4, but gameplay-wise, it's a crossover between Persona and Etrian Odyssey. Or so I'm told. I've actually never played Etrian Odyssey, but I have played the old Megami Tenseis. So as far as like first-person dungeon crawling goes, my perspective kind of comes from Megami Tensei 1, Persona 1. You know, I played those games and I really, really liked them. And then this game has the selling point that it's on the DS, and you get to draw your own map on the DS's touchscreen. So that sounded really cool to me. So, you know, I just thought the game was worth a shot, especially because I like the characters and stuff. So we're off to the races. My first impressions are quite good. The presentation is at that Atlas level of stylish that you'd expect, and I love these character designs. The soundtrack's quite excellent. You start off, you choose which character you want to play as. You either choose whether you want to be the main character of Persona 3 or the main character of Persona 4. You give them both a story, though, since they're both going to be in the game. But wait, I only get 6 letters for the first name and the last name? That's super limiting. And you have to misspell Charlie's name to get it to fit. Anyway, the setup is that the cast of whichever game's protagonist you selected have found themselves in a mysterious, empty version of Persona 4's Yasogami High School. I say empty, save for one young person and his companion, Zen and Rei, who say that they're lost here and they don't have their memories. Oh boy.
We were here when we gained consciousness. We don't remember anything before that.
Huh? Our memories were taken.
Here we go! Now wait, I'll get into the amnesia talk in a second, but first I'd like to point out that there's something wrong about that paragraph. I wrote it before I went back to record the footage by replaying the beginning, and I totally forgot that apparently the school isn't empty, but rather it's full of students just with nothing to say to the cast.
There's something weird about this place. No one I talk to listens to me or answers any of my questions.
I ask them, where is this? And they say, Yasogami High. But when I ask, and where is that? All they say is, this culture festival is so much fun.
I don't really get the point of this. Is it supposed to be a joke? Like, it's like commentary on how NPCs usually talk in RPGs? It's like really bizarre that this is included in the game and then it just never comes up again. Like, again, I completely forgot that this was ever a thing, and I played the whole game thinking that the school was just totally empty. And now it's weird to, like, think back to the whole game and imagine the fact that apparently the school was bustling the entire time. Anyway, so the cast of the other game eventually shows up as well. And one thing to note is that there's, like, a time paradox, right? So it's not like Persona 4 Arena, where the P3 cast is older. This is like a time paradox, where it's taking place in the middle of Persona 3 and in the middle of Persona 4, in this weird version of the high school. The Velvet Room is there. It has 2 doors that look like they probably go back to Persona 3 and Persona 4, with 4 big padlocks are on the doors, you know. There's 4 dungeons to explore in a linear fashion. You get the idea. It's pretty obvious. Cool. Now, this is fine at first. You know, we're greeted with a mystery, right? We're trapped here, but we don't know why or by whom. We just have to get out. But what's weird is that there's no apparent danger, you know? Like, there's no like reason that we have to get out. You know, it's just like we want to get out. We're stuck here, so let's get out. Also, there's this Zen and Rei say that they don't have memories. Maybe we can help them while we figure it out. I don't know. But that's it. That's all that you're given, you know? And I feel like that's fine at first because we've got all this. It's a new video game. We've got new mechanics. There's new character interactions that are going to happen since it's a crossover. There's new gameplay mechanics. There's going to be cool bosses, right? We get to, like, get into the game, right, for a little bit. There's not too much story right away. We can get to some gameplay quickly, right? That's fine. But we need one of those things to come in. As in, we need some danger to come in. Or we need we need a little bit more spark to the mystery to get us going. Because if that's all that we're given, and then it just keeps going on that way, then it gets really old really fast. And that's exactly what the game does. it gets old. That's all we're given. All we have in this story is the fact that there's 4 dungeons and 4 padlocks. The dungeons don't give any story about what's going on. The characters aren't figuring anything out. There's no bad guy or impending danger. And the 2 characters that we just met in this world have amnesia. So what's the point? We're just going through the motions because it's progress in the context of a video game. But that's boring when there's so little to go on. The game acts like it's some super interesting mystery that we'll be on the edges of our seats about. Oh, the chest at the end of the dungeon had a mysterious lock of hair in it. The character with amnesia thinks she might recognize it, but she can't quite remember. Oh no! I don't care! I, the player, have nothing to go on here. The lock of hair means nothing to me. The theme of the dungeon it was in doesn't have anything to do with anything, and the character with amnesia is extremely uncompelling. Ugh, I hope you like the gameplay here, or the crossover gimmick, because the plot sucks. On to gameplay then. The first-person dungeon crawling is just what I was looking for. I played this game between Megami Tensei 1 and 2, so it was kinda perfectly timed. And the setup for combat is quite interesting, but let's start with exploration. The dungeons, or labyrinths, are big multi-floor mazes where you're exploring around mainly looking for the stairs to the next floor, while also finding some treasure boxes, occasionally finding some shortcuts. It's pretty standard stuff. I mentioned earlier, though, that one of the selling points I heard for this game was the encouragement to draw your own map using the DS's touchscreen. There's some conversations with teammates early on to teach you about it and encourage you as well. Now, I'm a guy who knows a thing or two about busting out some grid paper and drawing some maps, you know, maybe taking some notes. So, this was very exciting to me. Unfortunately, now I have a huge issue with this map drawing system too, but it's a little nitty-gritty, so bear with me for a minute here, okay? So, on the DS's touchscreen, it's set up as a grid. You've got a pencil tool to draw lines for walls, you've got a brush to fill in floors, you also have icons to place for treasure chests, doors, shortcuts, a couple other things, also some general symbols for personal use. Awesome. Optionally, you can have floors and walls draw automatically for the square that you're standing in, so the wall and floor portion of the map is done just by you stepping on each square. This effectively makes it work like the auto map from Megami Tensei, except that you could theoretically fill in dead ends or corners without actually stepping in them to save yourself from a few extra encounters. Your manual duties would now just be to drag and drop your doors, chests, that kind of thing. I imagine this is vastly preferred for a lot of people, so I'm glad that there's the option to have the auto walls and floors on or off for both types of people. However, here's where my giant, glaring issue comes in, alright? So, here's the deal. Every floor, there is one super turbo, golden, chocolate-covered super chest that only opens once you have 100%ed that floor. But what constitutes 100%, you ask? Well, in this game, with a huge emphasis on meticulously completing your personal map, 100% does not mean that you've mapped the whole floor. The percentage counter pertains specifically to whether you've stepped on every floor tile of the dungeon. This completely defeats the purpose of the player manually filling in any of the walls or floors if they have to step on them all anyway. In fact, doing any manual work at all would only serve to confuse the player when they're stuck at 99% and they don't know which floor tile they haven't stepped on yet. That's right. This means that manually mapping everything or anything actively punishes the player, specifically due to how this percentage mechanic works. And believe me, what's inside some of these golden chests matters a lot. So this means you're best off just turning on the autocomplete and only drawing walls in yourself when it feels good. But never, don't you ever touch that brush, because you need to know where you've been. Then all you really have to do is just drag and drop the doors and stuff, which, you know, if all you have to do is drag and drop the doors and treasure chests and stuff, it sort of leaves you to wonder what's the point of even having the player do that, you know? we might as well just have that stuff automatically pop in as well, and the only thing that the touchscreen could do would be, like, to leave notes for yourself, you know? Like, drag in the abstract symbols for notes for yourself. I mean, honestly, I would have been fine with that. I would have thought that that was already a kind of cool mechanic, the idea of, you know, just being able to draw or write on the map to make your own personal notes, kind of like what they did with Phantom Hourglass. But no. This game has, like, this big emphasis on, like, completing a neat-looking, nice-looking map. And they want you to be able to draw it, but then they add in this other mechanic that punishes you for doing it. Okay. But hang on. You might be asking, what's so bad about having to physically step on every square of the dungeon, you know? Oh, so there's a little dead end that I don't want to... I want to be able to just draw the dead end on the map and not actually step in it. But what's so bad about just stepping in it real quick? Well, besides what I already said, that it defeats the purpose and it just like bothers me because of that, right? Also, having to do so, like having to step on every single square, is oftentimes much more tedious and dangerous than it sounds. So, let's talk about FOEs, alright? There are large monsters in the dungeons that you can see in the dungeon. They're not like a random encounter, they're like big monsters that have patterns that they move around in.
Holy crap, what is that? There's a giant shadow over there.
That is an FOE.
It seems like a very powerful enemy. Please be cautious.
All right, let's charge at it.
We won't be doing that. Don't rush into things without a plan.
And the rooms are often laid out as a puzzle to get past these monsters without fighting them, because you're not supposed to fight them. So let me give you an example. Alright, so imagine that this is the room that you're in the game. This is the room that you're entering, okay? This is kind of what the map looks like. So it's a grid, the thick lines are walls, and these are icons for doors, right? So you enter in this way, and you're going out that way probably, because it's just an enclosed room, okay? Alright, yep, those are doors, yeah? Alright, so, now, we'll say that these are the FOEs, yeah? They're big monsters that take up one square. Now, these FOEs' pattern is that when they have line of sight with you, they start chasing you, okay? This is a behavior that is very common with FOEs in this game. So, you enter the room, and you see that the tile square that's lit up under you, you know, it automatically drew in for you. The walls would automatically draw in too, but for the purposes of this example, I've already drawn them. So this FOE sees you, he's now going to start chasing you. So you come in here, you know, you make your way in a little bit. Oh, now that one sees you, so now that one starts chasing you. Okay, so you come over here. Oh, but now that one's in front of the door, so you kind of got to go around. Now they start chasing you, loop around, yada yada, boom. Now, you can exit the room, and you did it. You navigated past the FOEs without engaging with either of them. However, you did not physically step on either of these three spaces. These three spaces are counting against your map completion. Now, you could have just drawn those in on the map yourself, because you can look down those corridors before you move and draw in the spaces and complete the map yourself, but you didn't step on them. So, what that means is now you have to move your dumb ass back over here, and you need to physically step your character onto these two spots. But wait, now you're trapped here. So now you have to use the teleport item to teleport yourself back to town and completely exit the dungeon, which is an item in the game that you need to purchase from the shop each time that you use one. So you teleport back. Alright, you teleported back into town. You came all the way back into this room. The FOEs are back in their starting positions. Now you're right here. Okay, so now you need to go step in the other spot, which means you need to come over here, you know, come all the way back around here, bring these guys around, then go and step in that square. But now you're trapped again. Now you need to use a second teleport item to teleport yourself back to town once again, then return to the dungeon, make it back to this room, come back in, then go and do the original puzzle of how to get through past these guys, and now you've done it. Now you have pain in the ass navigated through the room enough times to get yourself stuck twice so that you can step on both of the areas that were previously blocked by FOEs. But the problem is that you don't look like this anymore. Now you look like this. Ooh. And I'm telling you, this exact type of situation happens all the time in this game. So again, my issue here is that the puzzle of navigating past these monsters in the first place is fun, but having to intentionally go about it in the most roundabout way possible in order to step on each unnecessary square, often getting into encounters with these monsters several times in the process, explicitly because it is not the correct solution to step on several of these squares, is not. I don't want a repeat of my Ratchet & Clank review where I like ream on one topic way too much, but this is one of the main features of the game, alright? The map drawing is one of the main features in the game, so there's just one more thing that I have to complain about with it, and it again pertains to the 100% chest, and it's just, I just need to mention it because it once again just shows how this system was all in place, and it almost seems like the 100% chest was just an afterthought that they threw in the end that ends up making no sense for all these reasons. So if you game over, you're sent back to the title screen to load your last save. That's normal. However, the game asks you if you want to save your map data so that you don't have to redraw the map. Okay, you know, that sounds fine. Except that the floor percentage stat is going to go back to where it was on your last save. So once again, overwriting the map data onto your old save that you're loading would once again only confuse you as to which of these squares you've already stepped on to add to the tracker. Ugh! Like, the percentage tracker really needed to work differently. It should check for map completion, not whether you physically stepped everywhere. Like, maybe that's exploitable, but nah, think harder. You'll figure it out. You can do it that way. Okay, hey, guess what? This game has combat in it. Quite a bit, actually. You might not think so with this how this review is going so far, but guess what? The game's got combat in it. Let's talk about it. So as you'd expect with this series, your characters have physical and magical skills for combat, right? Magic skills cost SP, while physical skills cost HP. There's a familiar list of elemental attributes for the skills, and most enemies are weak to at least one of them. And before I go on here, let me just stop right now and say, remember, I have not played Etrian Odyssey, so if anything that I'm about to explain is how Etrian Odyssey handles things, forgive me for explaining it as if it's a new idea. Because it might be new to Persona Q, but it might be how Etrian Odyssey already did it. I don't know. So in Persona, there's always like a bonus for if you exploit the enemy's weakness or get a critical hit, right? In this game, what happens is that character enters a boosted state. That means that on the next round, any skill that they want to use has 0 cost. And all boosted characters move before all others. So yes, you can chain boosts by simply using the enemy's weakness again. However, there's an interesting balance here. A character can be knocked out of their boosted state by taking damage. So that means if you hit an enemy and get boosted, right? Then, on the next turn, you use that skill for a second boost on the next round. Well, because your character is boosted, their turn is front-loaded. That makes it much more likely that the character will be struck and knocked out of their second boost if the enemies aren't dead yet. So, the system is really cool, but oh boy, does it make you hate enemies with attacks that hit the whole party. Overall, this battle system is really fun. You can do cool combos like have a super expensive skill like Megidolaon to use when you're boosted. I really enjoyed the battle system, and I need to emphasize that since I feel like I've been complaining a lot so far. The battles are really fun. There is one thing that I really didn't understand in the battle system, which was how all-out attacks worked. It's weird, you know, all-out attacks in the other games happen when all the enemies are knocked down, but in this game, they just happened sometimes. Here's a time where I had all the enemies knocked down, and I didn't get an all-out attack.
Eat this! Leave it to me!
Take this! Extermination complete!
Here's a time where not all the enemies are knocked down, but I got an all-out attack.
Top!
We could go for an all-out attack.
Yeah, I don't know, I just thought that was weird, I don't really get it. I played through the whole game and never figured out how they work. There's one further element here. So usually in Persona games, the main character is able to choose from hundreds of personas and equip one at a time, and they gain its skills as well as take on its stats. In this game, you have 2 personas equipped! One of them is permanent and unchangeable, and it is that character's base persona. You know, like Orpheus on my dude here. So this is where the character's stats are derived and some base skills, and so you aren't able to swap your stat layouts. The second persona is hot swappable, just like the other Persona games. Alright. But the kicker is, here we go, the kicker is, in this game, every character has this ability. Every character has their base unchangeable persona that determines their stats, and a hot swappable persona that gives them unique skills. At first I found this a little overwhelming, actually. Like, in the mainline personas, I sometimes spend like an hour in the Velvet Room crafting the perfect persona, you know? So taking that workload and multiplying it by 5 kind of worried me. But here's where we run into like a slight issue that I had with the game, but I think it was my own fault. So I got a little bored of creating personas, you know, because you have to make way more. Including your navigator, there's 6 personas that you have to like keep up and try to keep making better, right? But like, they don't have like better stats in this one, you know, because they're only skills instead of stats that are changing. It gave me like less motivation to make them, and I had to make 5 times the amount with less motivation. And also, I just had trouble finding fusions that were like objective upgrades, you know? I don't know, I just, none of the personas that I could make were really stirring my chili most of the time. So I just stopped. At some point, I just stopped going to the Velvet Room, and I found myself at seemingly no detriment. When I said earlier that this issue was partly my fault, what I mean by that is I think that it's because I was playing on normal, since I was afraid. I'm unfamiliar with Etrian Odyssey, so I was like, oh, I don't know about this, so I played on normal mode, and I'm not sure if it was just because of that, or just that, you know, for a good 40 hours worth of dungeoneering, almost every enemy seemed to be weak to instant kill spells, so Naoto just carried the party. But overall, the game just wasn't hard enough, even without ever visiting the Velvet Room, and I got kind of bored, and I ended up actually setting this game down for, like, several months, really. The funny thing was, like, so as I went through the game as a whole, I felt, for the most part, that every dungeon got progressively more fun and more interesting as the game went on with its mechanics. And the final dungeon was really cool. But overall, it was really just, like, the battles that were starting to bore me because I don't know, I think they were just a little bit too easy. So I took my own advice that I usually have with RPGs when people complain about random battles, and I just started running from most encounters, you know, and focused on the dungeons. And, you know, besides those annoying map mechanics I talked about before, some FOEs with their dumb patterns and stuff, besides all that, having a great time, except for one more thing. This game has spin-off syndrome. I don't know if that's the right thing to call it, but there are several factors. Let me explain. Oh, where do I start? It's the writing again, okay? It's always the writing. Ugh! It's always the writing. So here's the thing. When you met Akihiko in Persona 3, or you met Chie in Persona 4, they're normal people. You have conversations with them, and they have personalities. They have likes and dislikes. They have personal struggles. They eventually have arcs. You feel like they're your friends. They're really, really deep characters, and Persona is a series that is known for, its character arcs. Now, when Persona 3 and Persona 4 are very well received, lots of people play it, and these deep characters sort of enter the public consciousness, they start to become Flandersized. If you don't know about the term Flandersized, it's just a colloquialism for the phenomenon in which a character is boiled down over time to their most basic and most popular trait. So I said spin-off syndrome earlier, and the reason I'm calling it that is because the first part of that is that Flandersization is super common in spin-offs, especially in crossovers like this, where the intention with the writing is to show how the characters from the different games are going to interact with each other. But there are too many characters, and there's not enough time for in any of them to have any depth. So Akihiko, guess what? He is now cartoonishly obsessed with protein and working out. It's all he thinks about and all he talks about. He cannot form a coherent thought in his head that isn't related to this subject. Chie, oh, she's a lovely, deep, relatable No. Chie eats meat. Did you guys know that Chie eats meat? That's her character. She is cartoonishly obsessed with meat and eating it. There are too many characters. The thing is that wouldn't have to be a problem, but I feel like the writers exacerbate the issue by having as many characters as possible in every cutscene. Like, whenever something happens, as many characters as possible need to be involved with it or have something to say about it. And when so many characters are involved, they only have time for a line or two. So when they only have one line each opportunity about each subject, everything they say boils down to their one outstanding character trait. We already know all of these characters. They've already gone through their arcs, right? So when you make a spin-off, like, the problem is sort of understandable because you have to wonder, like, where were they supposed to go with the characters, you know? Because we already know who they all are and they've already had arcs. But what about Zen and Rei? What about those two? We don't know them yet. Those are new characters. They probably have some time to grow and develop. That should be exciting. But man, even though they are new characters with all these opportunities, they are actually written no better than any other character in this game. Rei eats food. Get it? She eats food. She is cartoonishly obsessed with food and eating it. That's her character. She is always hungry for more food. I just found all the writing to be super dull and predictable throughout due to these issues. Every little event needs to take a 2-minute cutscene because 7 different characters have to say a predictable, characterized line about it. And every one of these jokes also needs to be followed up by another character calling out the joke, like we didn't get it. We didn't get the joke that it's gross that Akihiko sprinkles protein powder on his rice, so we need another character to jump in and tell him he's gross. Oh, and remember Mystery Food X? Remember how Yukiko, Chie, and Rise are bad at cooking? Some of these old jokes are just... It's really getting bad the way that all of these jokes are being beaten to death so badly. These things that we remember from Persona 4. Like, honestly, between my issues with the writing that was in the extra stuff in Golden, as well as the writing in Persona 4 Arena, and P4 Dancing, and now this game, it's like, I'm actually starting to look back at original Persona 4 with contempt sometimes. Like it was poorly written. Like, I think back to Persona 4, and it's like it was a poorly written Saturday morning cartoon. But it wasn't! Persona 4 is fantastic, including its writing. I'm just sick of these characters being butchered so badly in every new fun game that they're wrapped up in. It's getting tiring. And really, I think that sums it up really well. That this game falls in line with all the other spin-offs I've played. Persona 4 Arena, good game, super fun game, very well made, but bad writing. Persona 4 Dancing, super fun game, really well made, fun game, bad writing. Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth, good game, bad writing. The ultimate issue is, again, what I mentioned earlier, the fact that Persona games greatly exceed in character development. Social links are literally a quantization of character development and character arcs. They're a major mechanic of Persona. So when you have a cast of 20 characters that are already developed, there's really nowhere to go except that they need to learn to set aside their differences and work as a team. But that's boring when it's already been done to death and their differences are just their taste and personality rather than any kind of real conflict. And again, no real conflict. This game is just that Zen and Rei lost their memories in this place that we need to go through 4 dungeons to get out of. And it doesn't go anywhere. So, do I recommend this game? I don't know. This is a review where I don't think recommendations are necessary because I gave my opinions, right? You can make a decision off of the information that you have and perhaps some that I've given you, I did enjoy the game. I finished it. I played it a lot and I finished it. But, you know, I wouldn't prioritize it. Like, here's what I'll say, is my recommendation is that if you want to play this game, play it on hard mode. I'll say that for sure. Play it on hard mode. That would have made the gameplay a lot more interesting for me, since I thought that all of my little issues with it were sort of bothered by the fact that, like, I just sort of got bored of the battles being not much of a challenge, and then just kind of running away from all the encounters and stuff because I was sick of the battles. So, yeah, you know, I'd play it on hard mode. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I hope that I wasn't, like, sounding overly negative, even though I did enjoy the game overall. It's just like, you know, what I didn't expect, I expected to do, like, a real quick, non-scripted, just, like, talk about the game, you know? But it turned out that I had so much to say about this that it's become kind of a longer process to write and edit this review. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And I hope that you have a good day. I do.